We all fall victim to sin, and Pokemon are no different. Most Pokemon learn to bond, battle, and try to be the best that they can. But unfortunately, there will always be those who dedicate their entire life to sin and must repent. A little over a year ago, I made a video talking about the 7 deadly sins in the Pokemon community. But what about the Pokemon that represent the 7 deadly sins? Let's start off with greed. Greed is the immoderate love or desire for riches, materialistic possessions, or anything else that would fuel one's selfishness. Choosing a Pokemon to be the embodiment of greed was kinda tricky, I can't lie. Just what Pokemon would be the embodiment of greed? Wait, I'm stupid. Okay, as I'm recording, god damn it! I just realized Greedon exists. Greedon! Okay, no idea how I forgot about him, but let's give you the spotlight that you probably would have stolen anyway. This dex entry reads, if it spots a berry tree, it will immediately go gather berries without a sideways glance, even if it's in the middle of battle. No way it'll just stop fighting to get a berry. Are you serious? There's not many dex entries since it's still new, but it's literally the greedy Pokemon. Squirrels store nuts and stuff for the winter, so I'm guessing it does the same, just year-round, you know? I was gonna maybe choose Charizard with the amount of forms it gets, but no, that's mainly the Pokemon company's doing. And sure, Meowth's signature move is Payday, which gives you more money at the end of a battle, but other Pokemon have access to that move too. It's not exclusive to it. So I ultimately ended up settling on Gimmighoul and Goldengo, and they're not here for a good reason. Quite the opposite. I guess none of these Pokemon are really here for a good reason. To evolve Gimmighoul, you need not a coin, not 10 coins, not 50, no, not even 100. You need 999 coins. Why? Because this greedy little bastard won't evolve without them. It's not that bad if you know where to get all these coins, but still, 1,000 coins for this little guy is insane. And it's likely that these coins aren't going to be in future Pokemon games, so you'll probably have to earn like 1,000,000 Pokédollars with this thing or something. If it weren't for the internet, I don't know how many people would have evolved this thing, because I don't think the average person would just collect 1,000 of these coins just for fun. And what's worse is that once you evolve it, all of the coins you've collected get reset, so if you want to evolve another one, good luck getting 1,000 more coins. I guess in the end though, it's kind of worth it, mostly because of Goldengo's ability, good as gold. It gives Goldengo full immunity to other Pokemon status moves, which is pretty damn good for terror raids. Pride. Pride is the inflated sense of one's worth and generally thinking that you're above everyone else. I'd like to talk about Prinplup for a second. You might think it's weird that a starter Pokemon is on this list, let alone a second stage starter, so what on earth could it be here for? A lot of its Pokedex entries talk about it thinking that it's the most important person in the group. Just take a look. It lives alone, away from others. Apparently every one of them believes it's the most important. Because every Prinplup considers itself to be most important, they can never form a group. I don't know who this guy thinks he is, but you're not the main character. Get out of here with your, my ninja, what? You're not him. I'm sorry. Incineroar is another Pokemon I really wouldn't expect to be here. Its dex entries though make me think otherwise. It's really prideful, cocky, and overall just egotistical. It also often ignores its trainer and doesn't listen to them. I get that it's the heal Pokemon, which is like a villain in wrestling, but just take a look. Although it's rough-mannered and egotistical, it finds beating down unworthy opponents boring. It gets motivated for stronger opponents. This Pokemon has a violent, selfish disposition. If it's not in the mood to listen, it will ignore its trainer's orders with complete nonchalance. This thing not only thinks it's better than some of its opponents, it gets bored. It thinks it's too good to be fighting you. On top of that, it thinks it's too good for its own trainer, because it will flat out just not listen to you and not care while doing it. Who do you think you are? You would not be half as strong as you are now without me, bitch. And it's even egotistical. It would probably taunt you in the heat of battle just because who's gonna stop him? Me. I will. I have this spray bottle. It'll probably be extra effective because he's a cat. You wanna listen now? I feel like I should have seen Tyrantrum coming since it has Tyrant in the name. So as you can imagine, it's pretty prideful. T-Rexes in real life are seen as the poster boy for all dinosaurs. So as you can imagine, the same is true in the Pokemon world. Even back then, I guess, because the Pokedex says, nothing could stop this Pokemon 100 million years ago. So it behaved like a king. And then the Ice Age showed up and humbled it real fast. It's a fossil Pokemon for a reason after all. And that first Cold Front would have hit real hard because it's not only a dragon type, but a rock type as well. This guy won one too many battles, and I guess got a god complex because of it. I hope before that happened though, it got humbled by a pair of keys or something. Put that thing in its place. I find it really hard to believe that nobody could stop this thing. It's weak to ice, fighting ground, dragon, and steel. There's just absolutely no way this thing wouldn't have gotten its shit rocked back then. Haha, get it? Anyways, I'm like 80% sure this thing would only choose to pick on things weaker than it just to inflate its own ego. Envy. Envy is the feeling of discontent or resentfulness over someone else's qualities, possessions, or success. As soon as I heard envy, I knew exactly who I needed to choose. Mimikyu. It had to be Mimikyu. It spends its entire life hating Pikachu because it's jealous of all the attention it gets, which in the context of the Pokemon world doesn't really make much sense since it's literally just some random rat you find in the forest and it isn't really seen as a mascot in universe, but I digress. Point is, this little guy has beef with Pokemon's #1 favorite cash cow. It's so envious that it even chooses to try and take the appearance of Pikachu. It doesn't do a very good job at it, but it's an attempt. If it could trade places with Pikachu, it would. It wants to be Pikachu so bad. Get in line, you have competition. I had no idea about this one, but apparently Chi-Yu is a certified hater. Its Pokedex entry says, the envy accumulated within curved beads that sparked multiple conflicts had clad itself in fire and become a Pokemon. I know that Mimikyu is the embodiment of envy, but this Pokemon was straight up born from envy. How do you get so jealous you manifest your own form? I don't know how you could get more envious than that. I guess even in envy, Mimikyu still isn't #1. I don't know how I'm dishing out strays to Mimikyu. I like Mimikyu. I really don't know what the hell this thing's even envious about though. They're just beads. Beads don't typically have emotions. I tried to look for more information and apparently the beads were given life by the envy of those who desired them enough to start wars over them. They're just beads! I will say though, its shiny is sick. Way better than a ton of other Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. Looking at you, Ceruledge and Armarouge. While not the embodiment of envy, I feel like I still need to mention Shuppet. Apparently it loves envy and hatred, so much that it's attracted to it and actually eats it. This dex entry reads, Shuppet grows by feeding on dark emotions, such as vengefulness and envy in the hearts of people. It roams through cities in search of grudges that taint people. I thought this would have been like a parasitic relationship where it just latches onto you until you die or something, but no. This thing actually apparently gets rid of those feelings for you, according to this entry anyway. It eats up emotions like malice, jealousy, and resentment, so some people are grateful for its presence. This Pokemon roams deep in the night seeking such negative emotions as grudges and envy. It retreats to its nest when the sun begins to rise. Shuppet is a legend for doing this. Like you always hear about ghost-type Pokemon inflicting harm on people, or at least just being an inconvenience, but no. This little guy actually goes around helping people. This honestly kind of made me like Shuppet more, and you all should too. Here's this other dex entry. Shuppet is attracted by feelings of jealousy and vindictiveness. If someone develops strong feelings of vengeance, this Pokemon will appear in a swarm and line up beneath the eaves of that person's home. You hear that, Twitter? They're coming after all of you. They're lining up as we speak. No, seriously, that's funny though. I like how they're like, someone's jealous? Oh shit, free meal! And all swarm in. I wonder what would happen if a Shuppet ate the jealousy and envy of a Mimikyu. It wouldn't still dress like Pikachu, right? Or maybe it would, since I suppose it still thinks that people would like it more if it looks like that. Either way, Shuppet's cool. Lust is an overwhelming, intense desire for something, but it's usually just boiled down to a really strong sexual desire. You knew that Ditto would be here. I mean, come on. While not really canon, almost everyone has that one Ditto they have in their daycare at all times. My name's mine Quagmire. We all know why. Who else but Quagmire? It'll breed with pretty much anything. Your Ditto has good IVs? Give it a Destiny Knot. You want a shiny hunt? Get a foreign Ditto and use the Masuda method. It's so useful. If you saw my first Iceberg video, you probably remember the Ditto daycare video by College Humor. College Humor, more like college dropout. It's a whole thing. I don't know what's going on with them. Anyways, it's pretty hard to forget that video. Again, like I said though, this is mostly the doing of the Pokemon community. So what about in canon? Pheromosa is a decent contender. It has a very feminine appearance, but I'm not putting it here solely because of that. Pheromosa's name is inspired by pheromones, which is a chemical that can attract people. I think. I'm not really great at biology or chemistry or whatever the hell this is. Alchemy? Anyways, Pheromosa is known for being beautiful. Her UB codename is even UB Beauty, and it uses powerful pheromones to confuse opponents, as if they were struck by Pheromosa's beauty, and they lose the will to fight as a result. Though close, I do think there are better options. Salazzle is a better example for lust. Much like Pheromosa, Salazzle also produces pheromones, but this time, she actually uses them for what they're typically for. Here's this dex entry. For some reason, only females have been found. It creates a reverse harem of male Salandits that live with it. Notice how it doesn't say that, oh, it's just the queen of the Salandits, or anything like that, kind of like a beehive. It straight up just calls it a reverse harem. It's using other Pokemon's lust to its advantage, and it's probably forcing them to feel that way too. Here's this other one. Salazzle lives deep in caves and forces the Salandit it has attracted with its pheromones to serve it. It basically has all of them in a chokehold. They're tier 3 subs for Salazzle. Only female Salazzle exists. They emit a gas laden with pheromones to captivate male Salandit. It goes even further than that though, because this next entry reads, when two Salazzle meet, they will use their pheromone gas to fight over the males in each other's groups. So now they're trying to steal from each other. And to complete this story, we have this entry that says, the winner of competitions between Salazzle is decided by which one has the most male Salandits with it. They're straight up having like simp battles. I'm not even exaggerating. This is exactly what it is. I know if I don't talk about this, the comments will be flooded with it, so I'll just have to address the elephant in the room. Are you in both videos? Unless you've been living under a rock TikTok these past few weeks, you've probably heard about the Game Freak leaks. And in those leaks, we learned something I wish we didn't know about Typhlosion. It's mostly just old folklore like what you'd read in the Sinnoh mythology, but it's still pretty strange nonetheless. Because remember, this wasn't written like literally thousands of years ago. This was written by some guy at Game Freak today, or like maybe 20 years ago. I don't know. Whenever we first heard about the Typhlosion story, it wasn't properly translated. And then someone said that it wasn't true, and then they tried translating it themselves. But now I think it's been properly translated, and now we know the truth. It's a little lengthy, but I'll give you guys a summary if you don't want to read it yourself. If you do, it's in the description somewhere. Anyways, the story revolves around a Typhlosion bringing a girl into his home while she was out too late collecting firewood. She was only supposed to stay one night, but the Typhlosion manipulates her into staying longer. He asks her not to look at his face, and they fall asleep for the night. After a few days, the girl told him that her family is probably worried. She then later realizes that he's a Typhlosion, and one day she suddenly wakes up holding a child. Eventually, her dad came to look for her, but the Typhlosion told her that she's his wife and he can't return her, so he attempts to fight her father. The girl begs and pleads, saying, "Please don't kill my father. I hope you're the one who gets killed instead." I guess saddened by this news, the Typhlosion says, "Goodbye. We will never meet again." And the story ends abruptly with her father killing the Typhlosion. So basically, he kidnapped a girl, forced himself onto her, forced her to have a child, and tried to kill her dad. What the fuck? Again, I get it's folklore, but this isn't real life folklore that was written like 4,000 years ago or something. This was someone at Game Freak thinking of this and writing it down. I just found it really disturbing at the end when the girl was pleading and begging him not to kill her father. The whole thing is just disturbing. Typhlosion has been taking on all the heat. Haha. Anyways, I think there's an even bigger elephant in the room. This isn't even the most disturbing story to come from this leak. And for some reason, everyone's just so focused on Typhlosion, they're just not talking about this story. And I think this video is the perfect place to talk about it. The story's literally titled The Original Sin Based on the Current Pokemon World. So what the hell is this about? Again, you can read it yourself if you don't want my abridged version. But the story basically goes that a woman and her friends would go to the forest to kill Slackoth, crushing their eyeballs and cutting off their ears to amuse themselves. One day though, she fell down and injured herself trying to climb a tree, and a Vigoroth with a chipped ear showed up. She tried running but lost consciousness and was attacked by it. She later woke up somewhere she didn't recognize, surrounded by a bunch of Slacking and Slackoth. They all had injuries from her and her friends, and as she looked closer, the corpses of Slackoth also hung from trees. They were victims of her and her friends. Then a Slacking appeared with a chipped ear. It was the Vigoroth from before, and she passed out again. She woke up at the entrance of the forest and they took her home. She later gave birth to a child, but the child was a Slackoth. She tried disposing of it, but couldn't. She stopped seeing her friends to raise her baby, and later her friends got concerned and went to her house, but they saw a Slackoth sleeping there, and like usual, they did what they always did. They stabbed it in the chest and killed it. They brought the corpse of the dead Slackoth to the woman's house, and she was extremely sad and ran into the forest back to where she was before. She ran deeper into the forest and threw herself into the lake with the corpse of her child. The story ends with it saying, from then on, her friends began to see Slackoth as friends just as she had. I'm not sure if that means that they also had children, since, you know, I don't think they were really friends. But what the actual fuck? My jaw dropped the entire time I read this. This is just so grim and dark. The murder, the rape, the murder again, and the suicide? Game Freak, what the fuck? I genuinely just have no words. Moving on. Sloth. Sloth is reluctance to work or to put any effort into anything. You know, just being lazy. Like Yandere Dev. I think that Komala is a perfect example of this. Komala sleeps, and that's it. That's all it does. This dex entry reads, it is born asleep and dies asleep. All its movements are apparently no more than the results of it tossing and turning in its dreams. I don't know how you're born asleep, but the nap can't be that good. This thing is so lazy that even its shiny doesn't change. Only the log does. If this thing meets a Darkrai, it's actually lights out for this little guy. It'll be in an endless nightmare times 2. It's even called a drowsing Pokemon. So if this isn't the embodiment of sloth, we do have an actual sloth as a replacement. Slacking might be even lazier than something that's asleep its entire life. And that's really saying something. Komala will at least attack every turn. Do you know what Slacking likes to do every other turn? Slack off. This thing is the Mordecai and Rigby of Pokemon. It's known as the lazy Pokemon. It's a sloth. Its name is literally a pun of slacking. I don't know how much clear cut you can get. Apparently the only time it'll move is if there's no food around, so it'll reluctantly move to another spot. Its signature move is even slack off. Like, come on, man. Benson would hate this guy. But it's so strange. This thing went from Vigoroth being filled with energy to just a lazy fuck. Like, get up, lock in. I also just want to briefly mention Jirachi because it sleeps for 1,000 years, it wakes up to grant wishes, and then it goes back to sleep. To be fair though, granting wishes courses must be really tiring, so I suppose it gets a pass. Gluttony. Gluttony is excess overindulgence in food and drinks just for pleasure, even if you don't need it. I think Snorlax is the first Pokemon that we all immediately thought of. He's actually one of the 2 Pokemon on this list that are a rare example of having 2 sins, that being sloth and gluttony, since it loves to sleep a lot, but it also loves to eat just as much. Here's this dex entry: will eat anything. Even if the food happens to be a little moldy, it never gets an upset stomach. So even if a piece of food is molding, that won't stop it. It is not satisfied unless it eats over 880 pounds of food every day. When it is done eating, it goes promptly to sleep. I did the math for once, and that's like 2,800,000 calories a day. A human only needs like 2,500 calories a day. So what the actual fuck, man? 2 million is genuinely insane. It has no interest in anything other than eating. Even if you climb up on its stomach while it's napping, it doesn't seem to mind at all. Here it just flat out says all it cares about is eating. I think that speaks for itself. And it's kind of fucked up that this is based on a real guy at Game Freak. It's based on this guy, Koji Nishino, and he's been catching strays for like the past 25 years. Somebody defend this guy. Guzzlord is probably the most gluttonous Pokemon here. Yeah, sure, Snorlax only cares about eating, but at least he eventually gets full. Guzzlord ate an entire world and still wanted more. Apparently it's constantly hungry no matter what. And with a mouth that big, it'll probably attempt to consume anything it can. One of its dex entry even says it has gobbled mountains and swallowed whole buildings, according to reports. It's one of the okay. I don't know why that second part's needed. How do you eat an entire building? Oh, I should probably also mention that its UB codename is literally gluttony, so yeah. We found our winner, Wrath. Wrath is how I feel every time I play Mario Party. I get really mad when I play Mario Party. Okay, no, but seriously, wrath is a strong feeling of hatred or resentment for something, usually with a desire for vengeance. Now, much like Snorlax, Morpeko is another rare case of a Pokemon being a mix of 2 sins. While yes, it loves to eat a ton, making it gluttonous, whenever it gets hungry, it doesn't just end there. It gets hangry. A lot of its Pokedex entries mainly focus on the rage it feels whenever it's in hangry mode, so I feel like it's probably a better fit for Wrath, if I'm being honest. As long as you keep this thing fed, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Hydreigon is a Pokemon that you should stay away from at all costs. Seriously, this thing's a menace. It'll attack anything that moves. Look at this dex entry. This brutal Pokemon travels the skies on its 6 wings. Anything that moves seems like a foe to it, triggering its attack. How am I supposed to know if I'm in the line of sight of a Hydreigon? What if one is having a bad day and ready to risk it all right then and there? It's a certified crash out. This thing's also known as the brutal Pokemon. Take a look at this dex entry. The heads on their arms do not have brains. They use all 3 heads to consume and destroy everything. Sweet! So they have nothing, literally nothing in their mind aside from destruction. Every dex entry talks about it seeking destruction. If you thought Hydreigon was bad, Primeape is the angry Pokemon. This thing feels nothing but rage all day, every day, no matter what. And apparently there's nothing that can calm it down. Even when it's asleep, it's mad. This dex entry says it becomes wildly furious if it even senses someone looking at it. It chases anyone that meets its glare. So even just glancing at it is enough to make it mad. What is this guy's problem? This one says some researchers theorize that Primeape remains angry even when inside a Pokeball. Dude, that's your downtime. Why are you mad in a Pokeball? This one says it will never forgive opponents who have angered it. Even after it has beaten them down until they can't move, it never ever forgives. So this thing even seeks vengeance, even after vengeance is already served. This is the last guy you want as your op. Even when it dies, it will still be after you. I'm not even kidding. It has been known to become so angry that it dies as a result. Its face looks peaceful in death, however. Good to know. I'm pretty sure Primeape manifested its own evolution Annihilate just so we could still be angry as a ghost. It just never ends. So do your best to not make this thing an enemy. If you have any other Pokemon that better fit these sins, let me know because I can almost guarantee you I missed a ton. Subscribe, like the video, comment, follow my socials. Sonic X Shadow Generations just came out and I'm probably gonna play it later. Goodbye everyone. Bye. Are you still here? You can leave.